I thought being alone in the woods on Christmas night was the safest part, until the footprints appeared where mine should have been. They weren't fresh, but they weren't buried either, pressed into the snow with a weight that felt deliberate, measured. I froze, because the silence changed the moment I noticed them. The forest didn't echo my breath anymore. It felt like everything was leaning closer. I counted the steps without meaning to. Same length as mine, same depth, the heel marks clean, the toes pointed forward, and my stomach tightened when I realized the line of prints didn't lead in from anywhere. No trail, no disturbance, just a beginning, right behind me. I stood there longer than I should have, telling myself there was an explanation I hadn't reached yet, because explanations are safer than what happens when there aren't any. I looked up, expecting branches to sway or snow to fall, something normal to break the quiet, but nothing moved. The cold bit harder, like it noticed me noticing. I shifted my weight, slow, careful, and heard the softest sound answer back. Snow settling, close enough to feel, but not close enough to see. That's when I understood the worst part. The footprints weren't following me. They were waiting. Waiting for me to accept that they belonged there. Waiting for me to take another step so they could decide where the next one would go. I stayed frozen, the silence pressing so hard it felt physical, and that's when the rule came back to me. Clear, firm, and unwelcome. If you're out here after sunset, you don't stay past midnight. I didn't say it out loud. Saying rules out loud gives them edges, and edges draw attention. I checked the phone again. No signal, just the time glowing faintly against the dark. That was expected. There had never been service here. That was part of why I came. Still, I kept recording. I always did. The notes weren't for anyone else. They were proof that time was still moving forward. Christmas Eve mattered. I'd learned that without learning how. Every year, same date, same place, same quiet understanding that the woods behaved differently tonight. Not hostile, not kind, just attentive. I never questioned it, because questioning felt like an invitation. I broke one rule. I murmured into the phone, my voice sounding smaller than it should have. Then something else broke another. The clearing looked the same as it always had. Snow unmarked except for my path. Trees spaced just far enough apart to let the dark settle between them. This was the part that always felt safe. Familiar. The routine worked like a shield if you followed it closely enough. I set the thermos down where I always did and took a slow breath, steadying myself. The cold was sharp but clean, the kind that keeps your thoughts orderly. The tradition wasn't about endurance or proving anything. It was about isolation, about standing where nothing reaches for you, about reminding yourself that you are temporary and the world is not. I checked my watch, then the phone again. Everything still lined up. For a moment, the fear loosened its grip. That's when the snow shifted. It was soft, almost polite, somewhere just beyond the edge of the clearing. I didn't turn right away. I waited for a second sound, something careless or uneven. When it came again, it was measured, controlled. An animal, I told myself. They stop when you stop. I took a step. The sound followed. Same distance. Same rhythm. I stopped immediately. So did it. The rules surfaced before the fear could fully form. If you hear something matching your pace, stop immediately. I didn't remember when I first learned that rule. I only remembered never needing to test it. My pulse thudded in my ears as I stood there, balanced and unmoving, the cold beginning to bite deeper now that I wasn't distracted. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. The woods felt too still, like a held inhale that had gone on too long. I lowered my gaze to the snow again. The second set of footprints hadn't moved closer. They hadn't needed to. They were already beside mine, perfectly aligned, pressed into the snow as if they'd been there the entire time, and I was only just allowed to see them. I backed away slowly, careful, eyes locked on the prints like they might move if I looked elsewhere. That was when the second rule surfaced, heavy and urgent, the way warnings do when it's already too late. If you find tracks that weren't there before, don't follow them. Don't erase them, and never step inside them. I didn't question it. I didn't need to. My body already knew. My heel slid before I could stop it. The snow compressed beneath my foot, deeper than it should have been, and I felt the shape of it give way. Wrong somehow, like the ground had learned a form it wasn't meant to hold. I realized exactly what I'd done the instant my weight settled. I had stepped into one. The regret hit hard and fast, a sharp drop in my chest, The kind you feel when you just locked a door and heard something click on the other side. I didn't pull my foot out right away. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that moving again would finish whatever I'd just started. The woods responded by going silent. Not quiet. Silent. No wind through branches. No distant creak of trees. No animals shifting. No snow falling. Even the faint ringing in my ears seemed to fade, like sound itself had been taken somewhere else. It felt absorbed, swallowed by the dark between the trunks. My body reacted before my thoughts caught up. My skin prickled hard enough to ache. My breathing went shallow, uneven, while my heart began to pound in a rhythm that didn't match anything I was doing. Fast when I stood still, slower when I tried to move, like it was listening to something else. I eased my foot back out. The snow didn't spring back. The print stayed, sharp-edged and deeper now, as if something had pressed down harder from the other side. That's when I felt it. Not a touch, not a presence I could point to, but a shift in awareness. The sense that the woods were no longer around me, but arranged for me, like I had stepped into the center of something that had been empty until I filled it. I whispered into the phone again, though my voice sounded distant to my own ears. I made a mistake. The sound of my words didn't travel. It dropped straight down, smothered the moment it left my mouth. And somewhere in the silence, close enough to matter, something adjusted its stance, perfectly, to match mine again. I tried to ground myself by listening to the phone. The faint hiss of the recording was steady, familiar. Proof that at least one thing was behaving the way it should. My breath sounded too loud in my ears, so I held it for a second, just to calm the shaking in my hands. The playback stuttered. A brief skip. A soft click. Then my breathing came through the speaker again. Except it wasn't matching me. The sound was half a second ahead. Inhale first. Then mine followed, late and panicked, like I was trying to catch up to myself. I stared at the phone, thumb hovering over the screen, afraid to stop it, and more afraid to let it keep going. I slowed my breathing on purpose. The recording didn't. It kept its pace, steady and calm, pulling air in and out before my chest moved, like it already knew what I was about to do. My stomach tightened as the understanding crept in, cold and certain. Whatever was out, there wasn't listening for me anymore. It was waiting for me to confirm what it already knew. The audio crackled again, and for a split second I heard something underneath my breathing. A faint, wet sound. Too close. Too intimate. Then the phone went silent, even though the recording timer kept counting up. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I let the moment hang, unfinished, because finishing it felt dangerous. Later, much later, they told me this part wasn't live. I didn't believe them at first. I still don't. Not completely. They said the phone was found days later at the edge of the clearing, still recording. Battery dead. Screen dark. Audio intact. They said the last entry was time-stamped 12:03 a.m. That's the part they keep coming back to. I told them the same thing every time, and I can hear my voice saying it now, calm in a way I don't remember feeling. I never recorded anything after midnight. Midnight was the rule. Midnight was the line. I know I checked the time. I know I stopped. And yet, when they played the final entry for me, I could hear myself still standing in the woods, still breathing, still listening, still being listened to. The timestamp didn't lie, which means either the phone was wrong, or I stayed past midnight long enough for something else to start keeping track instead. The third rule came to me the moment the whisper started. Not before, not as a warning, as recognition. If you hear your name spoken in the woods, it said, steady and absolute, don't respond. Even if it sounds like you. The sound slid between the trees like it was testing the space. My name, stretched thin, broken in places, spoken too carefully. It didn't come from one direction. It came from everywhere the dark touched. From behind me. From just over my shoulder. From the place inside my head where my own voice lives. I didn't answer. I didn't turn. I didn't even breathe. Something reacted anyway. The snow began to compress again, slow and deliberate. Not steps. Pressure. Like weight being lowered gently, learning how much the ground would take. I watched the surface sink and hold, forming impressions that suggested movement without ever showing it. The spacing was wrong. The rhythm almost matched mine, but not quite. Just off enough to feel intentional. Then I felt breath at my neck. No warmth. No moisture. Just the sensation of air moving where it shouldn't. Close enough that my skin tightened in response. My heart kicked hard, skipping against itself, while my body stayed rigid, locked between instinct and instruction. I could sense it now, not as a shape, not as a figure, but as a tension, focused, patient, close enough that the space behind me no longer felt empty. That's when I remembered the journal. I hadn't written it. It had been passed down, copied by hand, the pages soft and worn from years of careful use. One entry was marked more than the others. Christmas Eve. It talked about silence, about how the world grows quieter on that night than any other, how sound thins, how gaps widen. It said some things don't cross easily when they're noticed. It said silence helps. The tradition wasn't mine. It never had been. I was just the next one to keep it, or to fail at it. The snow compressed again, closer now, and the whisper returned, no longer testing. Waiting. That's when I ran. The rule shattered the instant my feet moved. Never run. It had warned. It only learns faster. The recording fractured as I did. Static tore through the audio. My breathing broke into sharp, uneven bursts. Snow cracked underfoot, no longer quiet, no longer forgiving. Behind me, the rhythm changed. Improved. Corrected. I could hear it now. Not following, not chasing, but matching me with growing confidence. Each step tighter, cleaner, more certain. Then the sound cut clean. No static, no breath. Just my voice, suddenly calm again, close to the phone. It didn't follow me out of the woods. I said, clearly, as if stating a fact I'd finally accepted. It followed the recording. That was the last clear thing on the file. If you're listening to this now, pay attention to the quiet around you. The space between sounds. The way the silence feels fuller than it should. Because it learned my voice. And it's had plenty of time to learn yours. The recording doesn't end cleanly. There's a stretch of low hiss, the kind you only notice if you're listening closely, and beneath it a faint, steady rhythm. At first, most people assume it's interference. Wind moving across the microphone. The phone shifting where it fell. But if you isolate the last 20 seconds, if you raise the volume just enough, you can hear it. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. Measured. Each one placed with intent. Compressing snow that should have already been still. They don't rush. They don't hesitate. They sound close enough to belong to the same space as the microphone. Close enough that whoever was holding the phone didn't need to turn around and know they were there. Some people say those footsteps are mine. I know they aren't, because I stopped moving. After that, there's nothing. No breath. No final sound. Just silence, held a little too long, like the recording is waiting for something else to happen and never quite accepting that it won't. That's where it ends. People still argue about what the rules were really for, whether they were meant to protect the person in the woods or everything else. And no one agrees on when it actually left the clearing. Some think it never did. Some think it only learned how. All I know is that every copy of the recording has the same ending.